This happened to me when I was probably about 8 or 9. I never told anyone that this happened, not even my closest friends, because, quite frankly, at the time I really thought nothing of it. But for whatever reason, 8-year-old me remembers this occurrence quite well. The event occurred in the middle of the fall while I was helping to pass out flyers for my church. Originally, I was not supposed to do this. My dad was the one who volunteered to hand them out. However, we lived in Wisconsin, and my dad was granted the very rare and non-passable chance to go to the Packers game and see Favor and crew take on Patriots. So my mom, sister, and I filled in. The job that we were to do was to drive to a few different neighborhoods and put flyers in people's mailboxes about our church. The city that our church is in is a very low violent and very quiet area with very little crime. Once my friends and I, when we were about 14, got stopped by a squad car when we were walking at night just for looking suspicious, and they ended up calling in 4 other squad cars. We obviously didn't get in trouble, but that just goes to show the lack of crime and things to do in our town. Anyways, how we ended up doing this is my mother would drive and drop us off at different spots on the long road of houses, and then we would meet by the car at the end of the road and continue doing this until we were done. All we did was put the flyer in the mailbox and move to the next one. I know, real tough stuff. Everything was going just fine, and we were about halfway done. The street that we were on was abnormally longer than the rest, and the area was well wooded. I came up to my next house, but this house had no mailbox. I thought about skipping it, but I decided I would just put the flyer on the porch of the house. After all, I could see it right through the trees. So I made the dumb decision to walk up and put the flyer right in front of the door. All was well, and I started walking away, but I was stopped by a voice of a man saying, "Hey, wait! Where are you going?" I turned around to see a man, about 6 foot, with a gray beard and decently long gray hair that was pretty messy. He asked me, "What's this flyer all about?" I told him it was for my church, and that we were looking to gain some more members. I told him that he should check it out, and that I had to go hand out some more. The man said, "Wait, why don't you come on in and talk to me a bit more about your church?" Thinking that this was perfect and that I was going to help grow my church, I agreed and walked in. I walked into the man's house, and it was very dirty and smelled awful. The man then began to ask me about the church, like where it was and the service times. This seemed okay to me, and deep down I felt like a hero. But then he began to ask me questions like how old I was, where I went to school, and where I lived. I never told him exactly where I lived. I just told him that I lived pretty far from the church, which was true. We lived a town over. But I did tell him that I went to the grade school that was supported by the church. Dumbass. The whole time that this was going on, the guy never took his eyes off of me. He never took his hands out of his pockets of his blue jeans. He seemed really nervous, and surprisingly, he kept a pretty good distance from me. He asked me stuff like what I was learning in school, if I had any brothers or sisters. It seemed normal to me because my 8-year-old brain didn't really know to suspect anything out of the ordinary. I was just talking to what seemed like a very nice man. Finally, he asked me one last question. He asked if I was handing out flyers alone. Now, being an 8-year-old, nothing is cooler than doing things by yourself, like picking out your clothes, pouring your own cereal, staying home alone while mom goes out for an hour. So I wanted to look cool. I had it set in my mind that I was going to tell him that I was out alone. But for whatever reason, I told him the truth, and that I was with my parents. This made him visibly upset. He frowned and kind of gestured to the door, saying, "Well, okay. You should probably get back to them." I walked out and said that I hoped to see him at church. He said nothing to me and stared at me until I got to the end of the driveway. I never told anyone about this. It took me years to realize that had I answered differently, I may not be here to be able to type this. It's vital to teach kids not to talk to strangers, no matter what. My parents always told me this, and I still disobeyed. As a 20-year-old now, looking back on this, I see how dumb I was. I really hope that that man has gotten help and that he has not lured any other children into his home. So, old man who possibly wanted to rape and or kill me, let's never meet again. This is long, so hang in there with me. This happened when I was 13 years old, and I am a female and much older now. I lived in a quiet, safe neighborhood with one sketchy block before mine. It was a corner that had 4 bars, one on each corner. My parents were strict, and they were the kind that had to not only meet my friends, but their parents as well. The year I turned 13, I was old enough to go to our community teen hangout. I don't want to give away the name, as it may give away my location. You paid $3 to get in. It was open only on Friday nights, and the hours were from 7 p.m. to 10 p.m. I lived about a quarter mile from the center, and it was located in town. My path was well lit until I got to the last 4 blocks that included the bars. I was allowed to walk and meet my best friend halfway. She lived closer than I did to the center, because of the area being safe. One night, after the center closed, I was walking my usual route when I noticed a guy pacing me on the other side of the street. I had already left my friend, and I had 6 more blocks to go. I wasn't sure he was following me, so I decided to try and play a game. I would randomly stop and look at something in a store window using the glass to see if he was stopping too. And he did. I tried this a few more times, and every time he stopped with me. I was approaching the 4 bars, and there were a lot of motorcycles and people out next to their bikes drinking and being loud. I wasn't apprehensive, because these guys never bothered me, and I had been walking this way for 3 weeks without any problem from them. The guy kept up with me until we reached the bars, then I noticed him turn around. I relaxed and hightailed it home, thinking I was going to be in trouble for being later than normal. I did not tell my mom and dad what happened, because I reasoned nothing happened, and it was just my overactive imagination. Cue the next Friday with a repeat of the previous Friday. I did tell my friend, who said she could get her mom to drive me home, but I told her no because I didn't want to lose my privileges, and he didn't really do anything. Yet. I should also mention that around this time I was stopped one evening by the bikers at the bar. A woman asked me why I was always coming home so late by myself. She was very nice, and I explained what I was doing to her, and after they would always wave at me as I was passing by. The next Friday the guy crossed the street. I froze. For the first time I could see him, and he did not seem too scary. He was an older man, and he was about 6 feet tall, not real heavy, and had dark hair and blue eyes. I started to back away because it felt weird that he crossed the street. I was just about to the bar where the bikers were. I started to run, and he chased after me, saying, "I just want you to be my daughter." I was starting to cry, and I was so scared, and he was gaining on me fast. What happened next is kind of a blur. I remember yelling, "Stay away from me!" At this point, I was right next to the bar. I was just screaming. I felt someone grab me, and I heard men yelling. I was trying to get out of the grasp of whoever had me when I heard a familiar voice say, "Stop, I have you." I froze, looked up, and collapsed into a ball of tears. The other bikers had the guy, and someone called the police. My parents picked me up, and I thought I was in so much trouble with them, but they just hugged me and said it was going to be okay. I don't know what happened to the guy, and my parents stopped me from going to the center for a while. I did get a chance to thank the people that helped me, and I hope that guy gets help so he won't try to kidnap someone else for a daughter. Before I begin this final story, I just want to say, it seems like the most untrue story on this list, but it's definitely unnerving nonetheless. Let's begin. This encounter happened to me a while ago. I couldn't share it for a long time. For some background, I live in Ohio, down a long drive, fields on both sides, and woods in the back. I'm about a mile away from town, so if I need police, I have to call the sheriff. I live with my husband and a boxer. The night this happened, my husband was getting some overtime at his factory. It was Saturday, and he was working 3rd shift. I had spent the evening at my parents' house, and I didn't head home until about midnight. Stopped in town at a 24-hour gas station to get some drinks and a chocolate bar and a beef jerky for my dog Eliza. As I exit the gas station, I get this feeling that's so strong I just had to look around, and I knew someone was outside with me. Over to my left, about 20 feet away, is a girl in a really cute little dress, with a white horse mask on, just standing there. We stared at each other for a minute before I hopped in my car and quickly pulled out onto the road, almost hitting a light pole as I belatedly checked my back seat for a danger. That was unnerving, but I was home just a few minutes later giving Eliza jerky and eating chocolate and watching television. All of a sudden, my dog takes off down the hall to the back porch, barking and growling and attacking the window. I run in there, afraid a window is going to break again. Eliza broke a window trying to get a coyote once already, and I stopped dead in my tracks. There, standing at the window, is a horse mask. Again, we stared at each other. I look over to the back door. Was it locked? Shit, I couldn't remember. Horse mask looks over at the door. Slowly I walk over to it. So does horse mask. We both reach for the knob. It was locked. Horse mask looks behind her, and for the first time I look around my backyard. There is a guy in a horse mask too. I'm like, okay, this is enough, I'm calling the cops. I got Eliza and shut the door to the porch and went to the living room to get my cell phone. Of course, I left my phone in my car when I carried my stuff in my house. In my car, that's in my garage, my dark garage. Basically lacking any choice, I opened the door to the garage and tried to open my car door. But oh, guess what? I must have locked it and I didn't have the keys. I crept back into my house. No sign of Eliza. No horse mask in the backyard that I could see. I grabbed my keys and got the phone. I called the sheriff and told them what had happened and that I was followed home and alone. They asked if they were still outside. I looked out of the window, room by room. Nothing. Until I got to my front yard. Right out front they were there. Just standing about 100 feet away, holding hands, staring. I honestly was crying at this point to the dispatcher, who assured me someone would be there soon. As I stood there, clearly on the phone, the girl waved. Then they walked, hand in hand, down my lane, out of sight. It took the sheriff 10 minutes to get out there. They found nothing. They told me the guy probably sat in a car and they followed me. Just kids being kids, they said. My dog didn't come out of my bedroom the rest of the night. I sat up listening to silence until my husband got home. A couple of weeks later, someone from the sheriff stopped by to follow up. They said they checked the camera at the gas station, but all it showed was the girl walk up by the dumpsters and stand there until I left, and she walked away.